Hello crafters, this is Yana Smakula for SimonsSDM.com. Welcome back for another Yippee for Yana episode. All supplies I'm using for this project are listed and linked in the video description below. In this video, I'm ink blending a floral design with the SimonsSDM Pawsitively saturated inks and the Layering Cosmos stencil. Let's jump right in. I have a large 8.5 by 8.5 grip mat from Waffle flower already positioned on my glass mat. The grip mat is absolutely fantastic for holding your paper and your stencil in place. I don't know how we crafted before without using this tool, as it really makes things so much easier. I have placed a panel of Neenah Solar White cardstock onto the mat, and you can see, well, hopefully you can see from the video, how well the paper sticks onto the mat and how it stays there and doesn't move. I'm also positioning the Layering Cosmos stencil on top of my paper, and I'm going to be doing some ink blending. I already have a card idea in my mind, and I want to ink blend a grouping of flowers at the top. I'll have 3 flowers at the top left corner and 2 flowers at the top bottom corner of my panel. The grip mat grips onto the stencil and holds it in place really well. So it not only holds the paper, it also holds the stencil. I don't need to tape anything at all. I do have a little bit of tape on my stencil, and the tape is just there to mask the other stencil part so that I don't accidentally apply ink where it isn't supposed to be. So I'm not really using any tape here. The grip mat holds everything in place. Now, if you don't have the grip mat, you can, of course, use the old method and just tape your stencil onto your paper and ink blend like that. I'm using SimonsSDM small and detail blending brushes today to do my ink blending, and my plan is to ink blend from the outside in. So I'll ink blend the flowers from the outside of the petal to the inside of the petal, making sure that the outside of the petal is where I focus most of the ink, and I keep the base of the petal nearly white. This is the opposite to what I would usually do. Usually I ink blend flowers from the center out, so the petals are mostly colored with very little to no white space. Here, I wanted a very different look, so I decided that ink blending from the tip of the petal to the base of the petal was a better option. I'm using a combination of 2 ink shades for each flower, and I'm doing yellow, pink, and peach flowers for this card. The yellow colors are SUNBEAM and CITRINE, and these, of course, are the SimonsSDM Pawsitively saturated inks. I really love these inks for pretty much anything. They stamp well, they ink blend well, and they don't stain, and they clean up very nicely. Now, with this stencil, you have 2 layers to each flower, so you can easily do 2 colors of ink. 2 colors of ink blending to give the flowers more definition. So you would just use 1 color of ink for 1 layer and then the other color or the other shade of ink for the other layer. You can see that I'm not even holding the stencil down. You can see just 1 hand in the video frame. I'm not even using my right hand. I am left-handed, so I'm blending with the left hand, and my right hand just has nothing to do because the grip mat does all the work for me. Using a small blending brush gives me a lot more control over where the ink is applied and how the ink is blended. And you can see that I get this gorgeous glow to my flowers this way. The flower petals look as if they are glowing because of all of that white space that is free from blending. I did not add any glowing agent here. There's no, shimmery product applied or glowy product applied. It is just the way that the ink blending is done that creates this gorgeous illusion. I'm also using pink, and the pinks are guava and watermelon. Now, this stencil is pretty awesome, as there are lines, or outlines I should say, that circle the layers that go together. The layers are easy to align, and it's not like there's just one right way and the layers just have to be aligned absolutely perfectly. No, there's room to be creative and, play. The orange or the peach colors that I'm using here are cantaloupe and melon. And by the way, this stencil has 2 different flowers, as I'm sure you've already noticed. There's a fully open flower and a sideways flower. Now there are also stems, although I didn't use any of those today. And there are also leaves that you can add to your stems or to your flowers directly. And I did add the leaves next to my ink blended flowers to, just to add a little bit of green to this color combo. The flower centers, I forgot to mention those. They were ink blended using the same ink colors, but the blending was done using the smallest brushes from Simon. I used the flat brush and also the tiny round brush to ink blend the flower centers. As again, I wanted to have more control over where and how the ink was added to this panel. Next, I placed the panel inside my Mini Misty stamping tool, and I already have another grip mat positioned inside my Misty. The grip mat replaces the black foam pad in there, and again, it serves a wonderful purpose because it holds my panel in place. Now this panel is cut slightly smaller. It is not the 4¼ by 5½ inches. I cut it a little bit smaller just because I wanted to do a different color background for my card. So it's cut to a smaller size. I have a beautiful hello stamp. This is from the Elegantly Modern Greetings from Simon Says stamp, and I'm stamping that in the center of my panel using the VersaFine Onyx Black ink. This is my go-to ink for any black stamping. It is absolutely beautiful. It gives a very dark black rich color. My ink pad is a little bit on the drier side, so I did have to stamp this image twice, but overall this ink gives fantastic results. Now I'm also adding a sub-sentiment under my main sentiment, and this one comes from the Tiny Words Encouragement stamp set. It's an older set from Simon, yet one that I absolutely love and use and still use today. And the one that I'm stamping reads, "Hoping today brings you happiness." I just love that sweet message. Moving on, I have already created a card base, and for this I use the Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock. I just cut my letter sheet in half, I scored it at 4¼ inch mark, and I folded it into an A2 side folding card base. Next, I cut a piece of yellow cardstock and I cut it at an angle. I wanted to add some interest to the background, and I usually do this, I like to do this by using colored cardstock. So here I have this oddly shaped, I guess you could say, oddly shaped or like an odd triangle, a cut from yellow cardstock. I adhered it onto my panel, and I'm going to add my stamped panel on top. I'm using foam adhesive squares here just because I want to add a little bit of dimension to my card, and I'm adding it in the center of the panel over both that gray, the light gray background, and the yellow strip. I love how the yellow diagonal paper adds movement and adds interest. It adds a kind of an unexpected element to this card. Finally, I am adding a couple of sequins to this card. I just wanted to have a bit of sparkle here, and these are the Aura sequins from Spellbinders, and I'm using the Simon Says Stamp embellishment wand to pick them up in position and gluing them down using the Barely Arts glue. Lastly, I am also adding a couple of white dot details to the flower centers. These are barely visible, but I felt like I wanted to add something. The dots added a little bit of texture to the flower centers, and it was just like a nice little finishing touch. I used the Sakura Jelly Roll pen in size 0.5. So that's a look at the card I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll give this idea a try. And next time you do ink blending, you will ink blend your flower petals from the outside in. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. Love you guys, and I'll see you next time.
Hi there, I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.